You're in a meeting and someone just dismissed your idea with a condescending comment. Your face flushes, your heart rate spikes. You feel that familiar surge of anger demanding that you respond, defend, attack. In that moment, you have a choice. React immediately and prove you're not to be trifled with, or remain silent, observe, and respond strategically. Most people choose the first option. They believe that showing emotion proves strength, that immediate reaction demonstrates they won't be disrespected. But here's the devastating truth. Every time you react emotionally, you're revealing your triggers, your vulnerabilities, and your lack of self-control. You're teaching everyone exactly how to manipulate you. In our hyper-connected world of instant communication, social media outrage, and digital reactivity, we've become a generation of emotional puppets, pulled by every provocation, controlled by every insult, and utterly predictable in our responses. But what if I told you that your greatest weakness isn't your lack of power, but your inability to control your reactions? Today, we're going to explore the uncompromising principle of emotional sovereignty, why mastering your reactions is the foundation of true power, and how to transform from a reactive victim into a strategic force. Let's start with an uncomfortable reality. Your emotional reactions are making you predictable, and predictability is the death of power. Every time someone baits you into an argument on social media, every time a colleague's passive-aggressive comment triggers an immediate response, every time you feel compelled to defend yourself against every criticism, you're revealing your psychological blueprint. You're showing the world exactly what buttons to push, what topics to avoid, and what tactics will make you lose control. Consider two executives in a high-stakes negotiation. Executive A takes every comment personally, reacts defensively to challenges, and shows visible frustration when things don't go their way. Executive B remains calm, observes without reacting, and responds only when it serves their strategic objectives. Who do you think has more leverage? Who appears more competent? Who commands more respect? The person who can be emotionally manipulated, or the person who cannot be provoked? Machiavelli understood this dynamic when he wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." In our modern context, this means it's better to be seen as someone who cannot be emotionally controlled than someone who can be won over through flattery, guilt, or provocation. The person who reacts immediately to every challenge is weak, regardless of their position or resources. The person who maintains emotional sovereignty is powerful because they cannot be manipulated through psychological leverage. The digital age has weaponized our natural tendency toward emotional reactivity. Social media platforms algorithmically reward outrage, controversy, and emotional engagement. Someone posts something you disagree with? The algorithm wants you to comment angrily. Someone criticizes your position? The system wants you to defend yourself passionately. Someone baits you with an inflammatory statement? The entire platform is designed to pull you into an exhausting cycle of reaction and counter-reaction. But here's the strategic insight. Emotional engagement is not influence. The person spending hours in online arguments, reacting to every provocation and defending themselves against every criticism is not gaining power. They're hemorrhaging it. They're revealing their triggers, their reasoning patterns, their emotional vulnerabilities. They're teaching everyone exactly how to control them. Meanwhile, the emotionally sovereign individual observes, absorbs, and acts only when action serves their interests, not when emotion demands reaction. The first principle of emotional sovereignty is what I call strategic delay, the deliberate practice of creating space between stimulus and response. This isn't suppression or denial, it's strategic restraint. When you don't immediately react to provocation, when you allow time between an event and your response, when you choose your battles based on strategic value rather than emotional urgency, you force others to wonder about your motives, your thoughts, and your next move. This uncertainty creates respect, fascination, and a form of psychological leverage that emotional reactivity destroys. Consider a scenario where someone publicly criticizes your work. The reactive person immediately responds with a lengthy defense, explaining their reasoning, addressing every point, and seeking validation. The strategically delayed person remains silent, observes the criticism objectively, and responds only if a response serves a strategic purpose, not because emotion demands it. Who appears more confident? Who seems more in control? The person desperate to defend themselves, or the person secure enough to let their work speak for itself? Machiavelli captured this perfectly. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. The fool reacts immediately, reveals their emotional state, and loses strategic advantage. The wise person uses delay as a strategic weapon, responding only when response advances their position. In the realm of digital communication and permanent records, emotional sovereignty becomes even more critical. Every angry tweet, every defensive comment, every emotional reaction creates a permanent record that others can use to predict your behavior, manipulate your emotions, or undermine your credibility. Think about the last public figure who destroyed their reputation because of an emotional reaction captured on video or posted online. Now think about the leaders and influencers who maintain power precisely because they're selective about their emotional displays. The person who reacts emotionally to every provocation is creating a comprehensive manual for anyone who wants to manipulate or discredit them. The person who maintains emotional sovereignty controls the narrative because there's no pattern of reactivity, no history of losing control, no evidence of being emotionally manipulable. As Machiavelli noted, everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. In our age of algorithmic surveillance and digital permanence, this principle is more vital than ever. Your curated emotional restraint is more powerful than your unfiltered honesty. The second law of emotional sovereignty is what I call productive indifference. The ability to observe provocation without feeling compelled to react. This goes beyond not responding to every criticism or not engaging in every debate. It means developing the internal discipline to see emotional manipulation attempts for what they are, attempts to control you through your reactions. Think about the last time someone tried to bait you into an argument. They said something inflammatory, and you felt that immediate surge of emotion demanding that you respond, correct, defend, or attack. In that moment, they controlled you. Your reaction was predictable and therefore manipulable. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." In modern terms, this means it's better to be seen as someone who cannot be provoked than someone who can be won over. The person who can be emotionally manipulated through guilt, flattery, or provocation is weak regardless of their position or resources. The person who remains strategically indifferent is powerful because they cannot be controlled through emotional leverage. In digital communication, this means not responding to trolls, not defending yourself against every criticism, and not allowing the constant stream of notifications to dictate your emotional state. It means recognizing that most communication directed at you is not about you. It's about the sender's need for attention, validation, or emotional release. Your indifference in response to provocation is not weakness, it's mastery. It signals that you cannot be controlled through emotional manipulation, and that your time and attention are not free commodities available to anyone who wants to consume them. The emotionally sovereign individual understands that their reactions are their most valuable resource, and they guard them ruthlessly. The third principle of emotional power is what I call calculated response. The practice of choosing when, how, and whether to respond based on strategic value rather than emotional urgency. This requires answering a simple question before every reaction. What do I gain by responding to this? Not do I want to respond, or do I feel like I should respond, but what strategic advantage does this response provide? Most people react to relieve emotional pressure. They're angry, so they vent. They're hurt, so they explain. They're provoked, so they defend. But emotional relief is not strategic value. In fact, it's often strategic cost. When you post an angry response to someone's criticism, you've just signaled that their words have power over you. When you immediately defend yourself against every accusation, you've revealed that you're insecure about your position. When you react emotionally to provocation, you've shown that you can be controlled through your emotions. Strategic response means treating your reactions as currency, valuable precisely because they're scarce and powerful, precisely because you control their distribution. The executive who responds calmly to challenges maintains control. The person who reacts emotionally to every provocation invites manipulation, interference, and unwanted drama from people with no stake in their success. In negotiations, relationships, and leadership, the person who reacts less and responds strategically holds the power. They're the ones others are trying to read, trying to understand, trying to please. They've created emotional asymmetry in their favor. Here we arrive at what might be the most crucial insight. Emotional sovereignty is not about becoming emotionless, cold, or unfeeling. It's about becoming intentional. It's about recognizing that in a world where everyone is reactive, emotional, and compulsively responding to every provocation, the person who chooses their reactions becomes magnetic. When you do react, people pay attention because they know it's significant. When you do respond, people listen because they know it's not given freely to everyone about everything. When you do engage emotionally, people value it because they know it's not an automatic response to every stimulus. Consider the difference between two leaders. Leader A reacts emotionally to every challenge, responds defensively to every criticism, and shows visible frustration when things don't go their way. Leader B maintains emotional composure, responds strategically rather than reactively, and displays emotion only when it serves a purpose. Who commands more respect? Who has more influence? The person who's become predictable through constant reactivity, or the person whose emotional restraint makes their engagement valuable? The path to power through emotional sovereignty requires 3 commitments. First, you must cultivate comfort with being misunderstood. Not everyone will understand your restraint, and that's acceptable. Your need for immediate emotional validation is weakness disguised as authenticity. Second, you must develop immunity to provocation. People will bait you, challenge you, and attempt to pull you into their emotional drama. Your refusal to engage is not cowardice, it's strategic discipline. Third, you must treat your reactions as power and guard them accordingly. Every emotional reaction you reveal is leverage you've surrendered. Be intentional about when you respond, how you respond, and whether you respond at all. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." The modern translation, "It's better to be respected than understood if you cannot be both." And respect comes not from emotional authenticity, but from demonstrated self-control paired with strategic restraint. The ultimate goal of emotional sovereignty is not to become emotionless for emotionlessness' sake or unresponsive out of fear. It's to reclaim power in a world that constantly demands you give it away through emotional reactivity. It's to recognize that your reactions, responses, and emotional displays are yours alone unless you choose to share them for strategic advantage. In an age of digital exhibitionism, where everyone broadcasts their every emotion and reacts to every provocation, the person who maintains emotional sovereignty becomes revolutionary. They're the calm in the chaos, the signal in the noise, the person everyone is trying to understand because they refuse to make themselves completely transparent. The choice is yours. Continue participating in the exhausting cycle of reaction, defense, and emotional reactivity that makes you predictable and manipulable. Or embrace emotional sovereignty, strategic delay, and calculated response that make you powerful. As Machiavelli understood centuries ago, and as our hyper-connected age has made more urgent than ever, true power lies not in expressing your emotions freely, but in controlling your reactions strategically. The less you react, the more power you command. The less you respond emotionally, the more respect you earn. The less you reveal your triggers, the more influence you wield. The path to power through emotional sovereignty is uncompromising because it requires you to resist every instinct our reactive culture has programmed into you. But for those disciplined enough to master their reactions and respond strategically, it offers something invaluable: control over your own emotional state, immunity to manipulation, and the kind of power that comes not from dominating others, but from mastering yourself.